Israel has gone after Iranian targets one more time, and this happened only yesterday at night, just after midnight. So the countryside of Homs and the coastal city of Tortul in Syria, they came under attack by Israel. Now you might say, well, this is targeting Syrian positions, Syrian military, but in reality they are not. Israel, again, they are not targeting Syrians, they are targeting Iran. Therefore, Iran is under attack by Israel one more time. Israel has launched this attack one more time. This happened last month when 2 of Syrian soldiers died and 3 of them were wounded. This time, this month, they are targeting Iranian bases, even though this time the target missed the people. It did not hit any human being. There was no casualties, in other words. But nevertheless, it signifies one important thing that we talk about in this channel a lot, and that is that a war is already taking place behind closed doors. We do not know. This is why they call it shadow war, but this is really not becoming a shadow war. It is more like becoming of a all-out war against Israel, who is fighting Iranian targets, Iranian forces based especially in Syria. Now, there are a few things I want to make mention to you, very, very important, because this new development is coming only recently, and a lot of people, they say, you know what, these things are happening all the time between Iran and Israel, but it doesn't mean anything. Why? Because nothing is happening. Now let me tell you this thing. Right now Iran, they're boasting, not saying, they're boasting that 20 kilogram of uranium was enriched to 60%, and 210 kilogram of uranium was enriched 20%. What does it mean? It means Iran has enough material that no other country in the world has when it comes to producing a nuclear weapon. Iran is that close. Israel is becoming impatient. There is supposed to be a talk end of this month, November, between Iran and the world major powers to come together and revive that deal, the nuclear deal that they brokered back in the year 2015. But this is not the end of the story. What is happening right now is that Israel's attack against Iranian targets, against Iranian military bases, these targets, these attacks are increasing every single day. We do not know what they will do next. We do not know what Israel will target next. Obviously, right now they're saying, look, we are not going after Iran, even though they are, but they are hiding those attacks under the pretext of saying we are actually targeting the Hezbollah coming from Iran, because the Hezbollah, they go into the northern frontier of Syria and they establish their bases, their presence. Israel, they said, we cannot have Hezbollah or Iran directly on our northern frontier, because this is very, very important, because this is the red line, quote unquote. This is the red line. They do not want Iran to cross this. At the same time, Iran is saying we are going to do whatever it takes for us to do whatever it is necessary to protect our troops, our interests, our proxy agents like Hezbollah and many other groups in that region. What does it all mean? What does it all mean? It is very, very simple. Iran and Israel, every single day, they're becoming impatient with each other. Israel is increasing attack. On the other hand, Iran is enriching their uranium. Once, and I said this before, once Iran has that 90% uranium enrichment, game over. Game over for Israel, game over for the world. The deal they have right now, under that deal, Iran can have only 3.97% uranium enrichment. That is the maximum they are allowed. But take a look at the number. It is now 60%, sitting at 60%, and it will take only few months. One report I mentioned, it will take them only about a month to produce one nuclear weapon, 2 months to produce two, 5 months they will have many of them. In other words, the more time Israel will allow Iran to do or process this nuclear or this uranium enrichment, the more Iran will have nuclear weapon, which Israel would not want whatsoever. Now Israel is targeting right now Iranian bases. Iran is boasting, we do not care. I mean, these casualties, this disruption of Hezbollah supplies, you are doing it something temporarily. This will not affect us permanently. In fact, look at this. Iran is using Hezbollah to safeguard really, or to distract Israel from the main cause, from the main objective that Israel has, which is to stop Iran having a nuclear weapon. So what Iran is doing, very, very important, what Iran is doing, Iran is going to Syria, supplying weapons to Hezbollah, telling Israel, go and fight these people, do not think about us making this nuclear weapon. Israel is like, man, these people are smart. We go after them in Syria and we cannot go after them in Iran itself. Because remember, the Nansets facility, the nuclear facility, was targeted before by Israel. Iran realized in order to distract Israel, at least for now, they must do something. So they came up with this idea of supplying or bolstering Hezbollah in the northern frontier side of the Syrian border, so that Israel will go after Hezbollah, forgetting about or getting distracted by Iranian presence in Syria through Hezbollah. This is a tactic that they're using right now. So what happened with the missile? Recently, as I said, only a few days ago, actually yesterday, the missiles came from Israeli occupied Golan Heights, and they launched this attack on, again, I would rather use the word Iran than say it is targeting Hezbollah, because this is exactly what Israel is doing. So the missile came from the Golan Heights early in the morning, and it landed in the capital Damascus in Syria, and this was reported by Syrian newspaper Sana. Okay, Wednesday's raid occurred shortly after midnight. The attack caused no losses, the agency added, quote unquote. Israel, which has carried thousands of attacks. Now this is something I want you to pay attention to, because people say, this is temporary, not happening every day, but there are like thousands of attacks taking place against Iranian targets by Israel every single month. And this, again, as I said, this is increasing by day. Earlier this month, 2 Syrian soldiers, as I said, they lost their life, and few of them were wounded. Israel, at the same time, look at the politics here. Israel is not giving any credit to Iranian presence in Syria. Okay, mark my word. Israel is not giving Iran any credit for their presence in Syria. Why? Because Israel is not saying a single word about those attacks that they're carrying out against Iranian target in Syria. Why they are not making it a victory claim? It is because they know if they do that, Iran will think, well, let's play with this game more. Let's send more people. Let's create more problem for Israel at the Syrian border. That way they will forget about us. Israel has repeatedly attacked what it has described as Iran-linked, quote-unquote, Iran-linked facilities and weapons convoys destined for Hezbollah, which is fighting on the side of Bashar al-Assad forces in the decade-long war in Syria. This is absolutely clear. Syria, Bashar al-Assad, Israel, they do not want to have Bashar al-Assad in power anymore. On the other hand, this is what is going to be making it even more interesting. On the other hand, Russia's President Putin, Russian forces, they are now based in Syria. Very, very important. Israel is not feeling comfortable with the leadership in Syria, which is Bashar al-Assad. At the same time, Russia is cozying up to Bashar al-Assad, supporting him, telling him, whatever you need, we will do to protect you, to protect your regime. Now, in the long run, what we might see and what I see coming is big problem, if not a war, between Russia and Israel. And why I'm saying that is because Russia is continuously telling Israel, keep off, do not come close to these targets. In case Israel attacks Russian targets and Russian soldier they lose their life, I mean, you can easily say that would be the end of WW3. And at that time, of course, US will also get involved, Russia, China will get involved, France, Germany will get involved, unless they come to the rescue of this country called Israel. They will not be able to stop it. So why I'm saying come to rescue of Israel, it is because all of these countries, the major powers right now, they're supporting Israel without any condition, especially United States. So United States might come into play and say that we need to protect Israel. We cannot allow this land to be bombed by Russia or any other country or China. Therefore, let's come to an agreement, which I don't think will happen. What will happen is going to be something much worse. They will not negotiate with each other. Once it starts, it will be very hard to have it backtracked. I don't think that is going to be even possible. Now, Tehran has progressively, now this is very, very important, Tehran has progressively abandoned its commitment to a 2015 nuclear deal. The reason it is important for us to mention here is because Iran is slowly but surely ditching everything that they were offered by the Western powers. Iran now, they're opening new frontier, whether it is for military purposes, whether it is for trade, commerce, technology, intelligence sharing, gathering. They are, in other words, making their reliance on these countries, these Western powers, less and less every day, and therefore they are not seeing any reason why they should be committed to this nuclear deal. As a result, Iran is right now completely ignoring US request. They're completely ignoring Western request. In fact, because of this behavior, we know that Iran, they came under sanction recently. If you do not know this, US, they imposed sanction on Iran again. Yes, recently US did that, and the reason for that is because Iran said, we do not care about all this deal, whatever you guys are doing, we do not care about them, because now we are finding new ways to survive, new ways to make trade deals, business deals, you name it. Iran, this is why they are so close to Russia, and Russia at the same time finding Iran as an ally that they can trust over any other country. So Russia is giving them or supplying them with military equipments, letting them have a base in Syria, letting them have defense system installed, Russian defense system installed in Syria, in Iran, also in Syria. In other words, Iran is siding with Russia and many other countries, even Venezuela, to survive. And Iran knows they have found this way to survive, and this is going to last for a long time. Therefore, their dependency on US and the other powers will not be needed unless it will impact their medical, let's say, sector. Right now, Iran is struggling with the COVID, even though it happened in the past and the worst is probably over for them, but nevertheless, it can always come back. So Iran might, at that point, will reconsider that no, maybe for the sake of our people, to treat them with all these new pills, new vaccines, whatnot, we will abide by these rules set by US and other countries. And I don't think that is happening anytime soon, but what is more likely to happen is in the coming days we will see that Israel is going to increase their attack on Syrian military and Iranian targets in Syria. They will not stop there. Understand this simple equation. If Israel continues to attack this Hezbollah and other militia group in Syria, how long they want to continue that? How long? They do not want to continue that on for so long, forever. So what is the next solution? Even if they target those convoys coming from Iran going to Hezbollah, even if they target, how many days or how many months or how many years they can continue to do the same thing over and over again? Because these attacks, they're not hurting as much. The next step that Israel will take is that let's stop it from where it begins, and they will go into Iran. This is how, and this is another scenario how this war will take place, but we do not know. It is obviously, one thing we know for sure, not looking good. It is not looking good. There are attacks. Israel is launching new attack against Iranian targets, Iranian interest in Syria, also inside Iran, sometimes against their scientists, sometimes against their doctors, some intellectuals of Iran. It is a pretty messed up situation right now. We'll have to see, we'll have to wait and see what the future will hold. But the war between Iran and Israel, to me, is very, very likely. Thank you for tuning in. I'll see you in the next video. Have a wonderful day. Consider subscribe to this channel.